All right. Hello, everybody. We are live, and today we have a guest on our live stream. We have Noah. Hey, Noah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Noah Pickle, and I am a web developer for a company that sells car parts to overseas military bases. So a lot of the languages that I work with are PHP. I work with MySQL, and then like the standard JavaScript, HTML, and CSS is mainly what I work with on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, that's kind of who I am, and that's what I do. I haven't mainly worked with a lot of iOS dev type stuff, but I know that it's development is development. All the same characteristics apply to each language. So, um,
All right.
yeah.
Are you actively like doing software development, or like are you managing teams now, or something in between?
So me, I'm actually just I am take I control. So it's just me and the IT department, and I kind of do everything IT there. So like I do the hardware stuff and I do the coding stuff. So I actually had to build a system from scratch when I first got there to keep track of our invoices, keep track of shipments when shipments were going out, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm currently actually the main thing that I do though is I work on a system that I built up there. I don't manage a team or anything. It's just me.
Uh-huh.
But currently I'm the one that's in control of what we're using and what we're doing and what we're putting together and creating and stuff. So
Oh, nice, nice.
yeah.
What brought you to iOS Tuesday? We know, I for some reason, like full disclosure, for some reason, I thought that you were a manager because I look at your LinkedIn profile
Mhm.
and says managers. I put like a thumbnail interview with the manager, so
Mhm.
like that's where my assumption came from. So, what
Oh,
brought you to iOS Tuesday?
so for me, I just thought I thought maybe I could put some input on mine because I'm somebody I didn't go through the traditional route.
Hmm.
And I went to a boot camp. I didn't finish the boot camp either, and I didn't finish college when I went either. I'm somebody who I've been doing it since I just started coding when I was 16. So I
Nice.
thought maybe I could bring I thought maybe I could bring some of the value to maybe some of the younger audience that are trying to get into development and iOS development. Because it's the truth is it's a very long path.
Mhm.
I think it's a very long and hard path that most people try to take, even doing development. So
Yeah, I agree with
yeah.
you. I think there are like really two truth to I like software development, not just iOS development, but like coding in general. Um,
Mhm.
on the one hand, it like I do believe that like almost everybody can do it, and if you have interest and passion for technology, or like just want to try it out, like I think everybody should try it. It's not for everybody for sure, but
Mhm.
another part of the software development is that it it is easy to start with trivial stuff, and
Mhm.
like with like I'm sure with web, with iOS development, but it is rather hard to get to the level where you can build scalable code, because there's so much stuff that you don't know at the beginning, and like the more you're developing, like the more things you learn. And another thing is um, the scale, because I interview a lot of iOS developers, and I can tell iOS developers from, let's say, who have experience working with a team, working with a medium to large product, like they think a little bit differently from indie developers, or developers who were mainly were doing like quick consultant kind of like job, like just like
Mhm.
come get it done, like, and like you're done. So like, how was your experience with like software development and coding? What kind of challenges you had to overcome, and things like that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, I had actually started coding when I was 16. So I started out fairly young. I originally started using a Linux laptop. I had no
Hmm.
knowledge of I had no knowledge of, like, regular standard computers. Um, eventually I'm here on Mac, but I started using Linux because Windows was too bloated for the current laptop that I had. So yeah, I started getting into development for video games. I actually started coding something called GCC, which is actually a derivative. It's like a more like, I guess it's like an attachment onto C++ for like video games. So like the PlayStation 3, for example, I was able to go on there and go on games like Call of Duty and give myself like wall hacks and see through walls and make it to where I could fly through the map and all kinds of stuff. So I started. That's actually how I started, was building mods for PlayStation 3 games, like Call of Duty and a few of the other games that were on there. But that's how I originally got started. It was very difficult at the time, especially for me, because I was just trying to get into coding. I was trying to see if I liked it or not.
Hmm.
And a lot of people don't really do. I mean, I don't think there's very many tutorials out there that teach you how to modify, a game system's, like, you know, their 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 hardware and their
Hmm.
software when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I had to like do a lot of extensive research on figuring out how to do that. Eventually, I started getting into like regular web development. So I just started learning, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. One of the biggest things that really affected me learning was learning, I guess, how objects work. Because if you want to get technical, you know, strings are objects, I guess, in a sense. Like, especially when it comes to web development, it's a lot of it's kind of uh, it's a lot of it's just kind of weird on how it works with things. So, you've got regular standard objects, and then you've also got um, I'm not sure how the whole iOS thing works, so that's kind of why I tried to look up some of this before I came on here to kind of
Hmm.
get an idea. So just like iOS, like, does the what is it called? The Swift, does that have like objects and stuff normally, like as normal coding languages
Yeah,
do?
yeah. Like we
Okay.
have, like they have objects. So like pretty much, everything is an object, kind of like in JavaScript. But like, yeah, we do have objects. We do have types. Types are like really big in Swift.
Mhm. Are the types, are they static or are they dynamically typed?
They're static. So like they're like Swift is a strongly typed language. So
Okay.
like if, like, for example, like a variable a is a string, it is always a string. Like you can like just, well, change it. Like
Change it.
in JavaScript, like a can be
Yeah.
like five can be like a string, and then you can change five to an integer or like a number. And but like you can do that in Swift. There is a trick in Swift, like type inference or type erasure. Um, when like you do have to do quite a bit of work to erase that type, and normally we see it in reactive frameworks, like such as Combine. So like and like they have API for that erase in any publisher. The reason being because when you chain a lot of events all together, your type will grow, like, as depending how many uh instances, how many functions, or like how many things you call
Hmm.
on that. So like it will be really long time. But when you're done operating with that chain of event, like you want to erase it to any publisher, so you don't have crazy conflicts in your code.
Oh, that's pretty neat. Um, Well, I know that you had asked about some of the conflicts that I had, like coming up, trying to learn stuff. I think
Hmm.
the biggest thing for me was learning the logic. Like, because I feel like once you learn the logic and then you start to get the basic syntax down of a language, you can kind of just like fly through. And then the only thing you really have to look up is, it's like, you may not always remember how to like specifically convert something to a string, or, I mean, obviously if you do it so many times, but there's like other functions out there, like sorting an array, like in
Mm-hmm.
JavaScript. They do some crazy thing where you can remove duplicates by just making a new set inside of a spreader operator, which is like it's in brackets and it's three dots and then like new and then set, and then it's kind of crazy. But I think was learning the programming logic for like the if and else statements,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning how to like use variables and how to like declare them so that you can use them later. If even if you're not setting them, or like if you're not specifically setting them at that time, or if you're just declaring them and then you're waiting till later to set in the thing. I think that was probably one of the hardest things. And then learning classes and constructors, I think that was a difficult thing for me.
Yeah. For me, I don't think that Swift was difficult for me, but in before Swift, my first programming language that I tried to work with was Java, and I started absolutely wrong. So when I started to code, I was um, doing test automation and quality assurance. So, and that
Mhm.
particular specialty that people learn more about tools because like you have to work with different tools like all the time, and you change jobs, so your tool might change. So like you have to pick up tools really quickly, and there is uh, kind of like believe that like you have to know tools really well and programming language will come second, and I disagree, because I tried to learn a tool like Selenium WebDriver, but like Java was so confusing to me.
Mhm.
Like the whole thing, why do we have to have like a main, and like what do we have, what do
Mhm.
we, like the way it would declare new like objects, so like you would have to call it new, and it was so stressful. But Python, um since again like if Java doesn't work well, I can jump on Python. So, and it's not like the production will go down. Like I just do my things a little bit differently. Python was a lifesaver, but like the challenges with Python, I think was more so like inheritance. Like I could like it took me a while to understand how inheritance work in Python, because like you have like that little self, what do you have to like do in your methods and your initializer. So like that was a little quirky for me. But after, like I would say after Python, like when you learn the basics, like the basic types, like
Mhm.
numbers or like integers, dictionaries, like arrays and things like that, other languages would be like rather easy. And Swift was rather easy.
No, I understand what you're saying. I actually agree with you on the whole using tools before learning the language is kind of, I mean, you can do it, but you're gonna kind of be in for a whirlwind, to be honest, because
Hmm.
it's like if a web developer goes in and they try to learn React, the React framework, which is built on JavaScript, without
Hmm.
learning JavaScript first.
Yeah.
And without, especially with the way that React is it's really cool the way that they have it, because you can use it's basically used with like HTML tags too. The JSX. I don't know if you've worked a little bit with React or not, but they have like the JSX tags, which
Hmm.
basically work just like HTML tags. And then you can create classes and IDs, and then you can give them functions kind of the way that you normally would. Um, and that's the thing. React is very extensive, and especially when you're learning how to return functional, you're learning functional components and class based components with React. It's kind of hard, because if you don't understand how classes or how functions work, and learn how functions return items, it's a little difficult. And I think if you don't really understand the different data types that are associated with programming, like strings, integers, arrays, um, multi-level arrays, and um, objects, like just objects in JSON, because we work with a lot
Yeah.
of JSON. Is I'm guessing that's how like you all just use like a parser that sends a string of
Yeah.
JSON and then you parse it at the other
Yeah.
end, just like yeah, because that's the way that PHP does it. So like the JavaScript that I have will build like a form data, convert it to JSON, and then send it over, and then that PHP will convert it. And so like PHP is really weird because it's all dynamically typed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like no whatever the variable is the variable's name, that you don't have to type in, like first name, string. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
declare it as a string. It's as soon as you type first name, its first name is whatever it is. And that's kind of the really bad thing about PHP. But
Mm-hmm.
I have learned one thing recently is that you can actually force the PHP interpreter to actually use strict types, which I found was really awesome. So it allows you to, when you declare variables, to make them a string or integer and all that stuff, and it actually goes through and looks for errors that way. That's kind of the thing I was having an issue with JavaScript too, was you know the the fact that like declaring types, or like remembering what type an object was supposed to be. Like so now I've actually started getting into TypeScript,
Mm-hmm.
to where you have to declare your type values and what your function is going to return, whether it's going to be a void or, it's going to return a string, or, or not void, because void doesn't
Mm-hmm.
return anything. But, if it has to be a void and it's not returning anything, or if it's a string integer, all the things to that sort. But yeah, that's kind of the thing that I work with, is I work with a lot of non-strictly typed languages. And now I'm trying to convert more to a strictly typed language. But yeah, you definitely have to understand the data types that come with programming, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to understand a lot of the other things, like just so like with if and else statements. So like JavaScript has regular if and else statements, right? And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming that Swift does too.
Yeah.
You guys have the ternary operator
Yeah.
with like
We
question
do.
mark. You all have that
Yeah.
too. Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't know if that was. I've seen a couple of other languages do that, but I know PHP and JavaScript have it for sure.
Yeah. We do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Like I would say, learning fundamentals is really essential, because again, like I start like when I joined my like my first iOS team, I started learning Swift, like just to understand how it works. And I would like I can say that I wish I would spend a little bit more time on fundamentals, like because like certain
Yes.
parts like would be like easier. And again, like at a time, like I, I my job was to like get familiar with the tool, and I think and one good thing about iOS is that like everything is so organic that like the tools themselves will push you to understand um, certain fundamentals of programming a little bit better, and you like there's no like really escape or like way around it. So like I guess like I'm really grateful that like I went that route, because in web for like I was doing web automation for like for some time, and like I was using Python, and in
Mhm.
certain things I was using JavaScript, and like you, there's so many things that like there's so many ways you can do stuff, and your tool is like doesn't really help you like to make it like make it right, versus like Apple is very close ecosystem. So like it's
Yeah.
just like the ecosystem forces you to do things right. I mean, you still can like in iOS we have a thing called interface builder. So basically like a storyboard you can put together manually the UI, like, and you can create segues. Segues is like little connectors that will connect one view controller, like one view to another, and it will be
Mhm.
your app basically with no logic. That's a possibility, but like it won't be really scalable app. And I know some like few folks who learn iOS development that way. Like it was their like it's how they touched like iOS, and then they started learning Swift. But I would say the more time you spend on boring, absolutely not interesting and not exciting stuff such as fundamentals, the easier for you it will be to like get up to speed with like fun stuff like React, Swift, iOS development, functional and reactive programming, because like fundamentals and learning the tools. Like now it's vice versa, learning the tools is as important, but like because I know the language, like I like it's easier for me to figure out like the tools.
Yeah, we'll see that. Yeah, I think like the big major taking point from this is that if you know the bottom ends of the language to the very grim, then you are going to be able to use that tool far extensively than someone just using the tool and not knowing the bare fundamentals, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
So for let's say for new developers, and I know like we kind of like from two different specialties, and I think like everybody can relate to like our conversation, whether it's like iOS developer or web developer or backend developer. So for new folks who are, let's say, they nail down their fundamentals, like they probably like put together some sort of portfolio, what advice would you give in terms of landing your first job? Because I know a lot of folks who struggle quite a bit in like getting into tech industry, and I also know like quite a bit of folks who like they went to a boot camp, or like they finished a course, like they put together a portfolio, they put together an app in an app store, like 9 months later, 3 months later, they're iOS developers. And also like I know folks who like 2 3 years like in the learning, and they're still like struggling landing an opportunity. So what advice would you give people who are trying to enter the tech industry?
the biggest thing I could say is to take your time. Don't rush. Make sure that you learn the fundamentals down right. Make sure you really understand and you grasp really hard on what you're trying to learn. Um, because I wish I would have went back and did that. And I think a lot of developers too could probably say that as well. Make sure you focus on the fundamentals. And this is directed towards any type of developer out there, whether you're front end or back end, or you're just a complete full stack. Build, and especially when it comes to portfolios, don't build something that's already on YouTube. Try to build something that is unique to you, something that I don't see a lot that people try to build. I don't. A suggestion would probably be, um, like for example, a lot of people like to build to-do lists.
Hmm.
For me, I would suggest maybe try building a password manager, especially if you're trying to learn full stack. I mean, even if you are full stack and or not full stack, even if you're full stack, or if you're front end, or just if you're just front end or just back end, even you trying to go and learn how the back end works as well will also make you a better front end developer. And the same thing vice versa for back end. So try to build something that's not on YouTube. And I know that that's kind of hard to say to newer developers, because the truth is a lot of developers are trying to learn from YouTube. And I will say this, YouTube has a very scattered way of teaching you things, just because usually one video will teach you one thing, but it'll miss out on this one simple thing that should have been included in that.
Hmm.
When it's something that's not really hard. You maybe just didn't get introduced to it. Like that's like with ternary operators. Like
Hmm.
that was the thing for me, is like I wasn't introduced to ternary operators. The only thing I'd ever seen was if and else statements, which
Hmm.
now ternary operators, there's plenty of videos, but like a couple of years ago I didn't see very many, or anything that was just kind of in my face, or that I just
Hmm.
did, or I must have went over and just didn't see it. But that was a thing for me. So now I'm able to set variables by using that in like one line, on a one liner, just if this is a string or whatever, and it just sends it out. Um,
Hmm.
But I would say definitely just focus on the bare fundamentals. Take your time. Don't there's no rush. Whether you're 20 years old or whether you're 50 years old, okay,
Hmm.
you have time to learn this stuff, and it's not going anywhere because apparently there's so many jobs that need to be filled right now
Hmm.
that companies are just needing developers.
Yes.
Um, and so they're needing a lot of developers. And I know this is a big thing that a lot of people talk about is, oh well, I'm a developer and I've got my portfolio up and I've tried this and I've done that. And if there's so many jobs open, why am I not getting a job? I will say this to truthfully is that a lot of companies really don't know what they're looking for. I think to be personally honest, I feel like a lot of them they use recruiters, and recruiters, they don't really understand as tech people what we actually do. And there are some companies that have good recruiters and they understand and they know, and some people that use the actual development team. And so
I think the point about recruiters, because like I work with a lot of recruiters and I
mm,
love recruiters. They like, but when a recruiter reaches out to you with like some sort of nonsense, there are two parts of the problem. Part A, it might be your like your profile. You set up your profile in a way that like it come up with their search. For example, I had like a good chunk, not a good chunk. I had a like I had a point of in my profile when I said like Android, and like I would like randomly was hit by recruiters, and I'm open to Android, and it would be rather easy for me to pick up. So, and I would have to like explain over and over again. Or like let's say another example, I recently updated my profile because a lot of recruiters would reach out to me for QA positions, and I don't do QA anymore,
mm,
and it's been a hot minute. But because in my summary, like I thought like that would be really cool if I include like test automation, like that I can actually do that. So like
yeah,
if my team like needs that, if my team does it and works together with QA team, they would look at my profile and say like, bingo, this is what we need. But it didn't work out in my favor because a lot of recruiters would reach out to me about QA positions, and they would
mm,
say like, you have an amazing portfolio, and like I know you're an iOS developer, but you know that stuff well. So I have to rewrite my profile in the way, and I have to actually put like PCA, service announcement, that like I'm not interested, and that helps. So like help recruiters to understand your profile, help them to find you. And the second part of the problem is the hiring managers, because
mm,
if the hiring manager doesn't provide the requirements, what they're looking for, and what that technology does specifically, it's like it's really hard for them to find right people, because like let's say a recruiter, like they have to find iOS developers, web developers, backend developers, .NET developers, backend Java developers, backend
mm,
Python developers, game developers, and they know like the keywords, and like they
yeah,
don't necessarily have to know what they mean. And it's the job of the hiring manager to sit down with the recruiter and say, hey, like I'm looking for an iOS developer, like who is really good with Swift UI. Swift UI is a new framework to do like UI visual stuff. So like new technology, if they know good, if they don't know, we will, like if they're willing to learn, like yes, we can do that. Like Objective C, old language, so we have quite a bit of legacy code, not a big deal, but we want to convert it to Swift. So like this is why they need to understand Objective C, stuff like that. And like recruiters who have that connection with with the hiring managers, they do an
mm,
amazing job. But like when the hiring manager is just like, hey, like this is the list of requirements, and you can tell that like those managers didn't work with the recruiters, and like
Yeah.
recruiters, like they just like, you know what, I just got this requirement, and like, can you explain to me what it actually means? And like I
Yeah.
sometimes sit down with the recruiter and explain what it actually means.
Yeah, that's actually awesome. I feel like that should be done a lot more. That should be, yeah, definitely have a love and hate relationship with recruiters. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that should definitely. I feel like that should definitely be done with recruiters for companies. Developers should sit down. I feel like the developers should tell, you know, the recruiters what they actually need instead of, I don't know, I guess like a hiring manager, or like the developers need to tell the hiring manager, and then the hiring manager needs to really understand, what's going on, because
Yes.
you don't want to hire somebody, for the wrong thing that they need to be in, like, because like the other day, like I seen a job where they wanted somebody who knew Java, C++, React, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and like all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of like, well, okay, what are we kind of doing? You know what I mean? Like, do we have, and it like, a lot of these jobs don't mention, they may say that they require these languages, but you may get in there and you may only use three of them.
Yeah.
Or you may, they may end up changing something and stuff. So, I mean, I think, and that's the thing, is that like there has to be some sort of resolution between that. For that's kind of, it's got to be fixed at some point. But the main key takeaway is, when a recruiter reaches out to you, I guess ask as many questions as possible to
Hmm.
really understand what kind of job this is, and whether or not that this company is going to be, beneficial to you, and whether or not you're going to be beneficial to them. I
Right.
think is the main key takeaway, and make sure that they understand, that they know what you are. Be honest about it. I've seen a lot of developers too. They'll go on there and they'll put on their resume that they have like 4 years in, you know, for a specific language, but they really only had, you know, they did it all like on their own.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, unless they built like an actual, like, an actual like application, whether that, actually produced, revenue and money and stuff, then that would be different. But if you're somebody who just, you went and did like a YouTube tutorials on C++, and you went through all that, and, you just kind of wrote C++ code, and you didn't really post any projects, and you didn't really put anything out there, then you can't really say that, you have 4 years of experience in a specific language. Be honest with recruiters. Let them know that you've only worked with this for so long, and you've only done this for a while. So, um, I think that's another key takeaway too. Is just to be honest. Let them know that you're willing to learn other languages. Let them know that you're willing to, that you're willing to put yourself up there, if there's a certain other things that are on that particular job description that you don't really have the qualities for. And two, apply to jobs that you may not have all the, requirements for.
Hmm.
Because sometimes they may be only looking for two or three strong ones, and you may have those two or three strong ones. And so they'll be like, okay, well, maybe, we can get this guy up to speed coming in. Um, and then you're set sail from there. And now you're in a place where you can do your own thing and work with your people. So,
Yeah, and I think another thing is like kind of like there's a difference between corporate recruiters who work for a
mhm.
company and say they have closer relationship with the manager, so they might know actually better what they're looking for versus agency recruiters, like they work with high value recruiting, and um, also like when you are applying, like I think when you're applying for direct role at a company versus like agency, um direct like some companies might have I think it is OFCCT P compliance. I might have butchered that, but like for certain industries you have like strict regulations that you absolutely must have those skills. And yes, if you're applying and you don't have those skills, they will not consider you. However, there are plenty of jobs that don't have like that are not under regulations,
Yeah.
and they just put together like a generic like job description. I see a lot of very generic job descriptions like coming from agencies, like in agency recruiters. So, and like I would say, if you're trying to land your first job, and if you're trying to like get your foot in the door, like contracts are like I think contracts is where it's at, because the interview process is significantly simpler and faster versus like interviewing for like I don't know like Amazon or like just it's just for a company, like because they
Yeah.
as a contractor they can let you go like tomorrow. I mean, company can let you go tomorrow. It depends like which state you live in, but
Mhm.
like for the company, and they train you, they invest money in you, they like they do so, you cost so much money to like get you hired, like just to let you go like a, a month after, versus like contractors, like it's rather easy for them, they let you go, they don't have to pay that money to the recruiting agency for you.
Yeah, I actually I actually haven't had much experience with contracts. A lot of my jobs have just been, regular standard W-2. Um, I've currently only had two developer jobs.
Hmm.
I got my first one when I was 19, and it was a WordPress developer job. So I got to work with a little bit of PHP, and we mainly use the page builders and stuff like that for WordPress. So basically, you basically be able to visually build pages, um, and you wouldn't have to really use much code, but you could use code to really extensify it and make it really good. Um, that was kind of my first job, and the second job is the one that I have now, but where I'm actually doing a lot of developer work. So when I actually came into this job, um, the company I think really took a chance on me because I didn't have a degree and I had been trying to self study this stuff and learn a lot of the things when I came in, and I um, I had to learn a lot when I came in. So when I came in, there was already a system built for all this kind of stuff, and so the system wasn't very good and it wasn't very manageable. It wasn't scalable.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the code that I would be trying to use is not uh, it wasn't very reusable at all for me to use, and it'd be like easy to read. Um, and so I would have to I eventually ended up going through, when I had to rewrite the system, I had to go through and learn MySQL while I was on the job. I had to learn about, the first, second, and third normalization forms to make sure that the database would be accurate, and and especially when pulling queries and SQL data.
Hmm.
Um, and then I also had to learn PHP very extensively because I kind of already had knew JavaScript very extensively, and I also learned jQuery on this job. Um, so I think, and the key takeaway from what I'm talking about is when you get into a job, you're going to get this imposter syndrome, and you're going to feel like you can't, that you just feel like you shouldn't be there, and it's not you. The truth is, you're not going to know everything,
Right.
and so you're going to have to take the time to just sit down and just focus and learn and do it as best as you can while you're on the job. I think is a good takeaway. You're not, I mean, especially if you're a newer developer, don't beat yourself up. You haven't been doing this for, 5 or 6 years or even 3 to 4 years. At some point, at some point, I will say this: along your developer journey, once you get your first job and once you land it and you work through and you learn all the stuff that you learn, there's going to be a switch that clicks, and it happened for me. And then it just seems like you just kind of know the solution, or you know what to find the solution to the problem that you're trying to face. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And like I think it's really like we had a really great discussion. And I think a lot of like granted we didn't really dive into a lot of iOS stuff, but like I think for us as developers, it's like really beneficial to get connected with other like developers, with other programmers, and like
Mhm.
and at the end of the day realize that we're walking very similar journeys. So like I always enjoy connecting with like uh, engineers from other fields. So if people would like to find you, where they and how they can find you online?
They can find me online mainly on LinkedIn because I actually don't use any other social media network. So LinkedIn, just go to LinkedIn, go to the search bar and type in Noah Pickle. You'll find me. It says I'm an information technology manager. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
there. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming to iOS Tuesday. I really enjoyed this like conversation, and I think we do sometimes need to go back to the basics and like kind of talk about basic programming stuff, even if it is not Swift and iOS. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here.
Okay. Thank you, Eugene, for having me on.
All
See
right,
ya.
thank you. See y'all.